Alright, so we're checking out the Happymodel Mobula7 04 edition. So before we get into the video, just a couple of things here at what comes in the box. So you do get a spare set of props, the HQ 45mm, 3-bladed with the 1.5mm prop shaft. That's a little bit quieter than the gem fan one that comes on the Meteor 75 Pro. And then you get a spare canopy. It matches that one, of course, with some spare screws. And that's pretty much it. That's all you get in the box. This is a new frame. They're calling this the M80 frame because it's 80 millimeters motor to motor. And this is, even though it's the Mobula 7, it's not the 40 millimeter propeller, so it's not 75 millimeters. It's 80 millimeters and the 45 millimeter propeller, so it's basically the same form factor as the Meteor 75 Pro. And with that, we have some, I guess these are 1102 motors. And I'm not sure if my camera is going to focus on that. It's 1102 10,000 kV, and this is 2S. So while it is the same prop size, similar motor, and form factor frame as the Meteor 75 Pro, the flight characteristics are completely different. I'm going to get that question a lot in the comments. How does it compare to the Meteor 75 Pro? And for those of you that are watching, the comparison is basically they don't compare at all. The Meteor 75 Pro is 1S. This is 2S. They just fly totally differently. It's like, having a 1-cylinder car versus a 2-cylinder car, or, 4-cylinder car versus an 8-cylinder car. You just don't, there's no comparison. This is a lot more power. It's a lot faster. You can do definitely a lot more freestyle acro maneuvers with this one. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of flight characteristics, but just want to get that out of the way because I know people are going to ask me, it's about the same size as the Meteor 75 Pro, so it should fly the same, right? No, it's not. It's 1S is a lot slower, has more voltage sag. 2S is going to hold voltage better. It's going to be a lot faster, a lot more powerful. So leave it at that. So yeah, again, a new frame here. It looks very similar to the one that came with the Mobula 8. And if you remember my video from like a year ago, I think, the Mobula 8 HD for the 03 used a similar frame. It was basically larger 2-inch props, so the frame was a little bit bigger for the 2-inch propeller and obviously different motors. But this one uses the same flight controller that came on the Mobula 8 HD. So that was the crazy F405 HD. That's the same board in here. It's a 1 to 2S board. It's got the motor plugs, as you can see. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, this board looks awfully familiar. It's got the micro USB port on the bottom. There's the F45 chip you can see there. It's got the BMI 270 gyro, the 12 amp ESCs on there with BlueJay firmware, and it's got the serial Express LRS receiver, and you can see the antenna is like this. I actually pulled the antenna out. It was kind of shoved in there, and I was kind of bent, so I didn't particularly like that, so I just kind of pulled it out and straightened it up. But when it came out of the box, it was under the canopy. But I prefer like this. I think it's going to get a little bit better reception. And of course, you've got the 04 air unit, or the 04 Lite, as you can see there. If you missed my videos on the 04 air units, I'll link the review in the video description. But yeah, they got the board over there on top of the flight controller. All these cables and stuff are very close to the props, so yeah, I think in a hard crash you might run into some issues. I don't think it's going to, not in like severe danger, but not particularly liking how close it is. I would have wished that this was a little bit more of a gap there, or maybe the board maybe a little bit higher or something like that, maybe a little spacer there. You see, it is quite close. So I think they are using the OEM plug and the antenna. And yeah, you can see that the wires, the plug is over here on the 04. It runs over the top of the 04 air unit through the canopy and then back through over here. So you have another set of wires over here where it could potentially get snagged. I mean, they could have probably made this a lot shorter and then ran the wires underneath. So instead of having the wires go over, have the wires go underneath. But I think what they probably ran into is this little gap right here, which is not focusing. This gap right here was probably not enough for these wires to sneak through, or it was really close to the props. So again, I think maybe they could have put a spacer here and lifted this up a little bit just to get it away from the props. Little design thing there. Ultimately they ended up putting the wires through on this side anyway, and under there and go to the flight controller. So yeah. And another question I think people are asking me is if can you run this on 1S? I did try plugging in a 1S battery, but it wouldn't take off because the motors wouldn't spin up fast enough, and I don't think this is running through a BEC on the flight controller. I think it's just using direct battery voltage, so not recommended. Basically you can't fly it. So if you're wondering if it'll do 1S, it does not do 1S. Alright, so here is the weight, no battery. It's coming in at 38.1, and then this is the battery I used, a Flywoo 552S, and it has an XT30 connector. Total weight together is 64.1, and this particular battery fits this tray, which is like a fixed size tray that basically is similar to the one that's on the Mobula 8, and this does fit in pretty nicely without too much effort. Slides in there and it holds in pretty good. The dimensions of this is 12 millimeters by 17 millimeters. Alright, so last thing to discuss is this canopy. It is this injection molded plastic. It's not 3D printed. It kind of looks similar to like a lot of the canopies that they've had in the past for their other models, but this is specifically made for the 04 Lite, for this camera. And as you can see here, this is hard mounted. So while it is sitting on top of these little rubber grommets for the 04 Lite air unit there, it's minimal vibration dampening. And they've gone a different way in terms of the way they want to get the video here. It's completely different from the way Beta FPV is doing it, where they're basically putting the camera on these rubber dampeners, or these rubber bands, and allowing the camera to float. But as you saw in the Femto video, this does not seem to eliminate all of the jello and the vibrations. They seem to still come through. But on this one here, and while it is a really nice PID tune, and if you don't care about the gyroflow stabilized video, the unstabilized straight out of camera video is actually pretty usable. It's nice and smooth without a need to really do much stabilization. That's what I found. So I'm going to link a bunch of flight footage down in the video description. You can examine it in 4K, blow it up, and do some pixel peeping if you like. So there'll be the DVR footage from the goggle DVR, which is excellent because you'll see that it flies really well, with one exception, and that exception is when you're doing dives. So I was going down diving this tree, and you're doing kind of like serious maneuver where you're going into your own prop wash. You get that pretty traditional yaw washout what you get with a lot of these whoops, and I think it has to do with this particular frame design. I'm not a frame engineer, so I can't really explain in detail why that is, but I think I also saw the same yaw washout on the Mobula 8 frame, which is very similar to this one. So that's unfortunate. So if you're primarily looking at this as a freestyler, I don't think there's much you can do with the PID tune. I think the PID tune is as good as it's going to be, but just because it is a Cinewhoop and it's got these prop guards, you just get the washout, and there's a lot you can do about that. I think it's going to require using a different frame perhaps, or maybe a different motor setup. Perhaps a different prop. The gem fan prop might help. I didn't get that far into testing. If that's something that you're really curious about, let me know in the comments below. If there's a ton of interest, I might do further testing with a different prop, because I did not get as much of that yaw washout with the gem fan prop on the Meteor 75 Pro. So take that with a grain of salt. That obviously would require a lot more testing. But basically, if you don't care about the stabilized footage, you just want to fly it and get the footage straight out of here. The PID tune is really good for most, straight flying, fast flying. It looked really good, right out of the goggles. And even what you can do is you can take the footage, still stick it through a gyroflow to do the lens correction. So the video that comes in on default is the 4:3 mode, which is what I recommend with Rocksteady turned off. You want to have gyroflow data recorded with the video. That's what I always recommend with these 04 air units. And you can do lens correction to change it from 4:3 to 16:9, and it kind of looks like super view. And but what you do is you just don't apply any stabilization, or you just turn smoothing off, so that doesn't take any of the gyro data and try and stabilize the video. It just basically does the lens correction. So you basically get the 16:9 stretched view of the goggle video. So if you want the 4K footage, you can still get that recorded off of the 04 air unit onboard memory, and you'll get basically the non-stabilized 16:9 footage from this, which I think looks pretty good. You guys can look at those. I'll have the 4K non-stabilized, just lens corrected, the 4K stabilized, and then the goggle DVR. Those three will be down in the video description. You can examine those closely, and you can let me know if I'm completely wrong in this assessment, but this is what I feel is what's going on here. And in the stabilized gyroflow footage, because this is a hard-mounted camera, those little micro vibrations that you'll see in the non-stabilized footage, it looks smooth, like you don't see anything going on there. But then after you run it through gyroflow, all of a sudden you see these like random uncontrolled movements and jitters that kind of come out of nowhere. Now, granted, that doesn't happen often. Only in like certain hard maneuvers you'll see it happen, especially if I go full throttle. Like anything above like 75% throttle and up, you'll see some of these micro jitters come out in the stabilized footage, but you don't see it in the unstabilized footage. At least not to the, from what I saw. Now, of course, I might have missed some here and there. I didn't like watch every second, and kind of think about it over for 30 seconds to a minute each time. But basically, if you think about it, you look at it, I'm making these maneuvers, and in the unstabilized footage, it looks completely fine. But then in the stabilized footage, once it applies the gyro data, it looks kind of weird and jittery, and like you're like, well, what's going on there? And that's because that gyro data is receiving vibrations from the motors and props that's coming through the frame, because this is not soft mounted, and those high frequency vibrations that you can't see in the video are in the gyro data, and then basically that gyro data is corrupted. So a lot of people ask me questions about soft mounted versus hard mounted. This is hard mounted, and that's what you're going to experience. Obviously the upside to having it hard mounted is that if you don't care about the gyroflow stabilized footage or Rocksteady, the footage will look fine straight out of camera. And if you got a nice PID tune like you do on here, it is pretty usable. And obviously, I don't think anyone's going to be using this for like professional cinema work. So I think it's completely fine for social media and Instagram and Facebook. And you're not needing to make it perfectly 100% smooth. If that's what your goal is, you probably obviously want to go with something else. But getting that kind of footage out of the 04 Lite that's going to be used in a professional setting, I think is probably asking a little bit too much. Now, if you disagree with that, let me know in the comments below, that you have a setup that you can use in a professional setting that someone will pay you money for. By all means, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about that. Anyway, again, links to those video files will be down in the video description. I have links to some of the other videos I made on my other channel on the Jello discussion. I've made a couple of videos already. I'm going to make another one regarding this particular model and hard mounting versus soft mounting. I'm going to kind of go into a little bit more, because I think that might need a little bit more explanation. If you don't really understand, let me know down in the comments, ask me your questions, and I'll try and help you out with another video, part 3 on the Jello discussion. And I'll sort of compare this one with the other ones that I reviewed, like the Meteor 65 Pro, the Meteor 75 Pro, the Pavo Femto, and I've got like the Fly Lens coming up in some of their models that I've got in the queue, along with the TQ18. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. Link to be down in the video description if you guys want to check it out, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.